and gentlemen, welcome back to A Hoops Journey. This is someone who, behind the scenes for me, as the young people would say, has been my plug into getting some of our guests on the women's side from the national team, which has been greatly appreciated. A guy who I have known probably longer than I want to admit, because that would qualify us as both being quite old, although when he hopped on to the Zoom, I was quite offended at how little he's aged compared to me. But a guy who we have a story that goes way back to the Brandon days, which is kind of fun. And then a gentleman who's really, taken a real huge leap into the coaching world. A U Sport CIS, I believe at that time is what we would have called it. Multiple national title appearances or nationals appearances, sorry. And then someone who's kind of been a jack of all trades for our women's national team program, from, head coaching U18s at AmeriCups and being a part of the senior team as an assistant. And so just a really great story. And for anyone out there who's aspiring to be a young coach in Canada and maybe feeling like there's roadblocks or certain things and pathways that are hard to take, this is a guy who's maybe like literally seen it all. And I'm thrilled to have this gentleman with us. We have none other than Mr. Steve Baur with us today. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you for having me. I think, you nailed it. Our time back to Brandon made this really cool to reconnect and a chance to share some of this. I mean, I think of those days often, especially when I think of like my story or how my path has gone and how important that was in the formative years. But, that's when we first connected, and here we are, full circle.
Yeah, it is wild, man. And I don't know, like we were just saying offline here, like how respectfully, how small the basketball community really is, right? And that there's only a few layers to it. There are lots of people involved, but it's really like we're all kind of intertwined and connected. And I think your story is so good because the thing that I appreciate about you, and you and I sort of, I was done playing at Brandon, but just sort of observing, those times and sort of just always a stand-up good dude, and being respectful and treating the game well and people well. I noticed that in you early on, and so it's no surprise that you've been able to kind of take your skill set, develop that as the X's and O's, but also make connections and build because of who you are, right? And I think that's one of the huge takeaways that I'm going to take away from today. So.
Oh, I appreciate that too. That's a nice compliment. I'll take that as well. I think I think everyone's path is always a little unique. And I think for me, that has certainly been a big part of like getting started. And not that I would say I'm a good guy, but I think just finding some spaces where you can fit in and not overstepping has allowed me to get quite a vast experience in basketball throughout the country has to offer. And, in some ways I felt like a little, later coming to like the love for coaching than maybe some others have, which I always thought was kind of fun too. When I look back on it, like my real early days, I don't think basketball was my primary sport when I was growing up. We played a little bit of everything. And I think it's like got to an age where you start picking your sports that you think are the ones where you're dedicating your time. I was more into like lacrosse and triathlons, which I guess means you just like exercising. So that was like the path that I was on. And it was actually like after college before I really got into basketball. So it wasn't much longer. And then we had started to cross paths, and then things just kind of went from there for me.
Yeah. And let's chat a little bit more about that. Like, had a little giggle listening to you talk. You hear the part, right? So you still got a little bit of the Scotia in you, right? For those that don't know, and a Nova Scotia boy, and talk about your upbringing. And why triathlons? Why lacrosse? Were there other outside influences? What is it? What was it? What the buddies were doing? And I think it's cool because we've had many people on the show who, some people just got locked into hoops at 5, 6, 7 years old and committed to the game then, and some people didn't start till they were in grade 12 or whatever, right? And there's no right or wrong time, but I think that just makes your story that much more unique. So talk about yourself as a young buck.
Yeah, it was a cool transition because I think there was probably most of us start usually with like a family persuasion or family interest influence what you're doing. And for myself, it was baseball. Like that was what my father played. And he still played it when I was a kid. And I think those things draw us to places. So you'll hear a lot of like coaches' kids are in the gym early because it's basketball families, and that either draws a love or maybe some cases pushes some people away, but whatever the case may be. But for me, I was on the baseball diamond. I loved it growing up. That's what we played all the time. but I think you nailed it. As you know, as you grew older, it was harder to just play baseball casually. You can't just go play pickup baseball. And that's where lacrosse came in for me. A lot of my friends were more hockey types, which is, I feel terrible as a Canadian. It was just never my main thing. I didn't like being on
I don't
the
even
ice.
know how to skate, man. I'm with you. My son went to a camp last week for Christmas break, and the one day they went skating, and I was like, oh, this would be interesting because he's never stepped on the ice before because we've never taken him skating, right? Like most
this
anti-Canadians ever.
correlation, but
Yeah.
like basketball people and hockey people just don't. They
Yeah.
get along, but they don't have the same skill sets. Like you watch hockey guys play basketball, you watch basketball people skate, and they just don't mix.
Yeah, they don't.
So because my crew was hockey people, I played lacrosse. That's something they did on ground, and I was more into like warm weather, which was great. And I think the triathlons was the thing I did in the winter. I enjoyed staying indoors for staying active. So those two things kind of pushed me through. I played through college and trained through college and into those spaces, but and ran a bit, like, or raced a bit in triathlons when I was done. That was probably a thing that I was still enjoyed as like a hobby, or spent a lot of time while
this guy called triathlons a hobby.
Yeah. You know, and
that's fantastic.
To tell you a little bit about me, like my personality, I wasn't a strong swimmer. I could swim, but it was my weakest part. So I'd committed to going daily to try and fix this leg of my race. But anyway, all just to say, like, this is how I filled it in my youth. Those are the ones that had more interest for me. And I love sports, but I think at that age, hobbies is how I saw a lot of them. I was on a different path. I went to school and was focused on whatever was going to happen with the rest of my professional careers.
Yeah. And what was that? So you went to university and, you know, you finished the high school years or whatever, decide where you're going to go. What is your academic interest there? He's smirking. So
well, this is where it takes this is where the turn became really fun for me. I went through college and I was going to be a tax accountant. I finished with both my the requisites to get into like your CA. It's a CPA now, I believe, but at the time it was a CA, and that's the route I was going. Had the job at a firm, and I also had my computer science, so I was getting ready to kind of in my dream at this time. This sounds so terrible, but I was getting ready to go into like tax accounting and help develop like systems that would automatically create these things for people. This was my pull, trying to go to the accounting firm. So. I had that job, and I was on my first like sites logging my hours before I got pulled away for basketball. But that's the stage where I was in my life before basketball really got the hooks on me. So I was.
And how old are you at this point?
Finished college, so let me try and do some of my math here. About 22, 23, and I think at that time I'd never thought of it as something that I was going to do. I had even coached some of my peers, some of my friends in hockey at that time, and also had not been pulled in by coaching either. I was ready to go into the exciting world of tax accounting, which people are always drawn to. You know? But,
I love it.
Yeah, there I was. And, you know, the transition for me came like really innocently, in that I actually had a friend who called me to say, you know, he just got a new job. He was a writer, so I think he switched newspapers at the time. And he said, I can't meet my volunteer commitments to coach a basketball team. It's like 8-year-olds. I said, no problem. I can fill in that one night a week. And this is actually how it started for me. And I won't lie and say that team pulled me in right away either. I saw that as a really fun opportunity to give back and enjoy something that I enjoyed at that age as well. But what happened after the first year was where it really started to turn for me. Is the organization at that time in our community didn't have teams. There's this one team that this family, because one kid had an interest in playing, and I'll come back to that kid later, but they had put this team in. So I was like, oh, I'll help get it organized. I was almost like more admin in basketball at this time too. Like, yeah, let's start a minor basketball system here, and we can join the Halifax system, and we'll have a bunch of teams. And
so are you in your hometown at this point, or have you moved out?
No, I'm still hometown, Sackville. Like, again, like not much going and basketball wise, but this is where it turned for me, because what happened that next year is, in my mind, I was like, I did a great job. We got this organization running. We're all going to be in, but I forgot the whole process of getting and recruiting coaches for all these teams. So we had like 12 teams running in our first year, and I was coaching like 8 of them. So I was like, whoops. Yeah. And it did two things. This is the year that it really pulled me in. I thoroughly just enjoyed the people, just being part of that with all these different ages, and how different it is this. A lot of us know in coaching how different it is coaching 6 and 7-year-old men or women, and or girls or boys, and then coaching 15, 16-year-olds. You're like, just the whole dynamics of what you're trying to teach and how they function as individuals and teams is so different. And I found that so intriguing. It just really pulling me in. And I would not have wished for all the 8 teams again, but this was for sure the part that got me like into it. And I was seeking people to talk to me about, what are you supposed to do with 6-year-olds, like versus like these 16-year-olds? Like, you don't do the same things, obviously. So what's happening in their development? So I really got pulled into just trying to figure out what the role was of a coach, and loving the connections I was making with the people involved at that time.
So it seems like maybe it's the accountant brain, but like you really like early on, it seems like you enjoyed the process of things. Like I see this, what I have at the start, but how do I get it to improve? Right. Because, and then analyzing it, like, and you are correct, right? The 6 or 7-year-olds as opposed to a 15-year-old, they're in such different places. So it sounds like you kind of had that process brain for it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And it did. And I think it helped shape me. And, when I look back at these pieces, because you have to have so much more awareness now of what's happening at these different levels. And I mean, not to jump around too much, but if I look back at my current role with like the National Federation, and this is a conversation we're trying to have with people all the time. And I've been fortunate to like live what it looks like these different stages of athletes' careers through my own experiences, which is kind of, I'm sure many people have, but I don't know that many people within our country have had the same as me, of like right from them as an Olympian or in their professional careers all the way down now. 6 years old was where I started with some of these groups. So it was kind of fun to touch all these spots.
And I think in the end too gives you an appreciation, right? Like I've been doing the senior boys for 18 years now at my school, right? And I'm dying for someone to step in, and then maybe I can do grade 8s and then just have a whole new perspective, right? Just that that 4-year age gap will change everything and how I approach it, right? And I think that's probably how you have been able to just really develop and shape your craft, because you've sort of seen it all, where like you make a good point. A lot of people start in college and they stay in college and then you get a university job, and it's the same thing. It's kind of young men and women. It's not the grassroots level, right? So,
and there's
it's funny too. Sorry to cut you off. It's funny how one mistake about forgetting to recruit coaches ends up sort of opening like. Yeah, it could have kind of gone in 2 ways for you, right? It would have been like, I'm going to run and hide. This is awful. I'm never doing this again. Or you're like, this is a growth mindset opportunity for me. I'm going to try to learn as much as I can. So I think it says a lot about you and how you viewed it.
Life presented some opportunities that I look back and I'm very thankful. I mean, it's also a thing that, to your point, I couldn't have done it if it happened to me now. Like when we're married with 2 kids, like I couldn't have taken on this kind of mistake to be like, no problem, I'll give up every night of the week to be in the gym with all these various teams.
Your wife's like, sorry, what?
Yeah, you can't do that much volunteering. Yeah, that's not how this goes. But at the time, it fit my lifestyle, no problem. So you're like, this is a cool, challenging growth, as you said, just to see how it transpires. And those things, one thing I've learned, I feel like for me, is that you're so fortunate with the players that you're blessed to be around, and the athletes that are really playing and making all this thing go, because the role you play as a coach is so different by these different stages as well. And like one of the more formative is like that late high school and college coaches. They can really have a bond with athletes that almost in some ways is like an extended family. Like people will really look to those coaches, and like I'll always go back to them. And that's not the same thing that athletes want from their pro coaches, or that they want from their coach when they're 8 years old. Like they say you go through different stages of what the athletes want from you, but at the end of the day, for our coaching success, right or wrong, and probably more wrong, we often get assessed by the athlete performances. So if you coach tomorrow, if they gave you, the Denver Nuggets as your job, or they gave you the Las Vegas Aces as the job, then you get seen as like a pretty good coach, assuming you don't mess it up. But
yeah, no doubt.
There's a lot to it. I'm not faulting that. I'm just saying it's
No.
an element that goes into the assessment of coaches.
For sure.
And,
yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
I was going to say, and this led to a lot of my pathway at the beginning, because I mentioned that one family and the one guy that, in this case, who wanted a team in Sackville, he just wanted a team. That's what drove this. Is his family's like, oh, he's pretty good at basketball. He loves it, relative for like a 12-year-old or whatever it was at the time. Oh, no, he was 14 years old at the time. And then what led the next year, we're running these teams, and he goes to play provincial teams. So again, I'm so new that I'm actually like, oh, I'll take you to the things and find out. And as luck continues to have it for me, we go to these first year provincial teams, and Les Barry's running that team. And this ends up being a really big thing for me, because Les was trying to get this kid. I'm like, hey, I've heard this kid. You guys are playing in Division II. You shouldn't be in Halifax. Like, can I get into the tryouts? So we get everybody.
What's
connected.
Division II? What does that mean? Like
in
your club system? Oh, he's playing
just
second tier kind of thing. Okay, got you. Yeah.
And this kid was good enough that he should have been playing on a team that would get him into Division I. So that just had enough attention of like, we want him at provincial team tryouts. That stuff all makes sense. And like I said, here I am just along for the ride. He gets to the first tryout, and Les had a couple of staff that didn't show. So he's like, well, you're a coach. I don't know you, but like, go over there and watch the basket for me, and next thing you know, you're in, and you do I think so in your intro, you talked about just trying to respect what was going on. I was very appreciative that Les would even give me that in that moment, because again, I was still blossoming in terms of my interest and passion of basketball as a pathway for me. But it was such a cool experience. I'd gone from coaching just club, and I would say that was way more on the side of for fun than what a provincial team starts to get to, which would be more on the side of high performance.
Sure.
So you get in there, and I think, wow, I just got to make sure I don't overstep. I'm just going to listen to what they tell me and what they need. I'll give back as feedback. I'll make sure the drill or the basket doesn't get out of hand, so they can come around and assess their athletes. But as the summer would play out for me, I was able to fill in blanks where some of Les's staff didn't show up that summer. So we did 2 summers like that, where I was basically the extra coach. I would come track things for them, stats, whatever it might be, and just be around and just having a chance to learn from him. Mark Parker was on that. Tim McGarrigle was around. So it was a lot of, like, I would say, very big names and people I didn't feel I should have access to in that Nova Scotia market at that time, but was getting it. So I was just like, what a really cool and inspiring summer, 2 summers that had been for me. And unfortunately, my athlete didn't even end up making the team.
But you still made the commitment to come out after that. Yeah.
I thought, what a gift I would have been given. So I was like, yes, I'll certainly come if you guys will use me in any spaces. And some practices that meant I ran the clock and tracked some things, and other practices, Les gave me some opportunities to be a part of it. And, that grew. And where that's really led for me, though, is then Les got the job in Brandon following this from Nova Scotia. And the one thing he wanted to bring, and I did appreciate this a lot about Les, is he was very honest and transparent in our communications. And he had said to me, I don't know if you're ready to be an assistant coach for me at the youth or CIS level at that time. But he said, but I know I can trust you, which I do value. Like, he's like, I'm ready to coach this team in Brandon, but I just need someone I trust with me. And just like the coaching thing at that stage in my life, I was like, I have the ability to do this. And I remember that was the time when I called home, and I thought my parents were going to respond differently. They both did a 180 of what I expected. So I called my mom to be like, I'm loving this. I want to go chase this and see how it turns out. I'm going to go coach college basketball for almost nothing and just see if I can make some ends meet out there.
In Brandon, Manitoba?
In Brandon, Manitoba, which is going to be awesome. And I'm going to give up my accounting job and go do it. And I was expecting her to be follow your dreams. And she was like, how are you going to eat? Like, this is what happens for my mom. And as a parent, I look back like, I get that now. But at the time, I was like, don't worry, like, whatever. And my dad was the opposite. Like, it makes sense. If you're driven, then go figure it out. So away I went with Les, and that's where our paths started to cross. We landed with that women's team the first year that had been in a state that they just needed to get themselves going, and we were still fortunate enough to get a couple players. Sherelle Carberry came out from Halifax, and we landed Semra from Germany, who I think in hindsight, a lot of teams would have taken her, but it's so hard knowing the international players. So a lot of them had passed on her when she had reached out to coming to Canada, but us being new and having nobody, were like, sure. And then she ended up being like I don't know if I'd say she was an all-star level, but she was probably like around that level if she was on some of the teams. So it was a big ad for us. And we went from, 0-win program to like 10. I think we were in the playoff mix to like the last or second last weekend, which was a really big step for that program, which was.
There's some rough years, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough for sure. And Donnie Thompson did what he could and everything. It was just time for some change. And it was just tough. I mean, when you think about the location of Brandon and you have so many other schools around that are established on the women's side, how it's very hard to recruit and get, women to, the men's program is established, but on the women's side, it was, yeah. But again, stroke of luck, things work out. You get 2 recruits and let it roll, right? Like, Nove kind of did the same thing when he was there. Like, he was able to get a couple studs every year and then win more games than people expected them to, right? And that's all it takes. So, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and then it starts to go. And I think in that time, as you said, on the women's side, Tanya had done such a great job at the U of W. Pam was doing a great job at U of M as well, but Tanya in particular was just like gobbling up all the Manitoba recruits. So if you can't get anybody local, it is hard. It's not impossible, but it is hard to get those programs going. So
for sure,
a couple players helped us get a little bit started, and then the men's program. This was the next step of my career. The men's program was in that transition. So the men had been on the opposite end of the spectrum. As an alumnus, they won. That's all they did. So the 2 spectrums going at the same school, and but it was the end of Jerry's time. It was just he was leaving, and the school was figuring out what they were going to do. And Les's 1 year at the women's almost ended up being like an on-site interview, which he never probably realized till the year was wrapping up, and the opportunity came for him to shift over. So we shifted over, and part of that. Yeah, here I was now, like
has this ever happened anywhere? You know what I mean? Like where two coaches come in, they coach one gender team, and the next year they're coaching the other gender team. Like, it's wild, man. And like you say, the polar opposite in terms of expectations and standards, right? Like, I'm sure at some points you probably were like, man, it'd be nice to just see where we can take this thing with the women over a 5-year span, and if we can build. And then it's like, well, then there's this opportunity where, I can't say no to this, but this comes with a whole different can of worms, right?
For sure. Yeah. And, Brandon led to almost all that for me. So to your point, we left the women's side. And at the end of that year for me, under my entire coaching resume, I had, maybe 9-10 minor teams I had done. And I had maybe like 2 individual years of high school basketball I'd done. I think both boys at that time, one in Nova Scotia and one here. And
how are you feeling about your craft at this point? Like, are you?
Well, this is it. On the women's side, because we were a program that was getting going, because it was coming from where it had been and getting going, I felt like confident that I was at least still one step ahead for where the athletes in the program were, and I was like, I'm still contributing. But I will admit,
like a first year teacher.
Yeah. Yes.
One class ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But when we got the men's job, I even had to tell Les, I'm like, I got to be honest, like. I have some nerves now. Like, these guys, this is a program that's been winning. Like, anything short of being at nationals is a massive disappointment. Me going to nationals, if I just like look at where I am in my career as a coach, I'm going to be more excited than I should be as a coach. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we qualified. We're doing this. And at that time, nationals were Halifax. So you're going home. So I'm like, this is all just, it felt like a lot. So I had, some imposter syndrome worries at that moment of my career too, and Les to his credit was like, don't worry, man, I got it. Just keep being someone I can rely on.
Which is such an interesting point too, that he was able to see that, because with his experience, right, obviously having a wealth of knowledge as a head coach and being involved in coaching for so long, that word trust just sort of like, he was almost willing to sacrifice maybe your lack of knowledge in X's and O's, knowing that I'm going to Brandon and what's going to come with that. And at least I know I have a ride or die with me, right? As opposed
Right.
to someone who maybe, and no offense to you, and you, I don't think you would take it, is wealth of knowledge or years of experience, but I don't know this person and haven't developed any relationship with them. I think that's huge, man. And it's probably something that as you stepped into the roles you did going forward, maybe became important to you even in your own foundation to this day. And I think a word trust is something we throw around a lot, but it is huge in terms of,
For sure.
yeah, it's a very interesting thing. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm very thankful for him, like that, all the way the whole life went for me is like, I wouldn't be in this spot if he didn't value that's what I was bringing to him. Because to your point, there were people around in the Brandon community, especially went to the men's side, there are people around that he could find that could have brought more to just even to his own coaches' discussions behind the scenes, let alone like the on-court. And I think the on-court, he gave me a lot of I look back, he gave me a lot, knowing that he would correct what he needed while I was going, but it was allowing me to build my voice and confidence on floor. But he was not getting the same return. He was getting the thing that he trusted, someone he trusts with him, which he valued, obviously, but he wasn't getting probably the same level he could have attracted for like, well, we should think about doing it this way. Have you thought about handling or getting, Neil Gordon shots this way or DD like short shots this way? Like I probably wasn't providing that. I would be unaware of that, but I wasn't providing that with what he could have been attracting at that time. So I was very fortunate.
I think too, like both of us have experienced into it. I'm sure at some point, the fact that he went from the women to the men, he also probably stepped back and was like, no, because Brandon, I loved my time there and enjoyed it, but also he probably was super aware that he just needed a fresh slate. Like, to maybe have someone who was still like McCutcheon or someone who was still sort of, one of Jerry's guys. And I think as a head coach, you probably just want like, and with the community being so small, you got men's Bobcats and the Wheat Kings, like you're kind of the prime deal in town. So it was almost probably a healthier perspective to just have, okay, he's a little green, but I'll take that as opposed to maybe having sort of like, this is the way we used to do it, and not in a disrespectful way. I think it was the right play for sure.
For sure. And I think totally. As you know, when there's coaching changes, especially after a legendary coach like Jerry and with the success that he had posted, it's not all smooth on Les's side. Like there's certainly people that are not warm to the change.
For sure.
So I think that increased the need of like, I just need someone I know is in my corner. And not that I think he and Jerry actually got along well, but it doesn't mean that everybody around it supported it the same. So it was, we only have 2 years in Brandon because then,
crazy.
And I know. And then from that, we had the job opportunity popped up at Acadia, which is my alma mater. And for Les, it was a chance to come back home. And I know that for him was real heavy. I think if you, at the time, Les and Trish had just been engaged, I'm going to say this thing, or just gotten married. But I think if that had not been the case, he would have stayed. I think he liked what Brandon had to offer. I think he was like, we can win here. I think if the decision was just basketball, he was going to stay. But I think there was family elements to it that also weigh in these decisions. So he ultimately came home. But for me, I'd say I got, 2 years of Brandon. I felt like I got 15 years of experience. Just the scenarios that arise there with the history of the men's program, both for good and challenges that come with that. The history of the women's program, the good and the challenges that come with that. And it was just like a real crash course for me. And the one thing that we were leaving that Les had said, because Barnaby was coming into that time. And I connected with Barnaby as part of the transition plan. And Barnaby was welcomed me to stay there. And Les had said, again, I don't know how you make all these decisions, but Les had said, the only thing you didn't get from Brandon, because they showed us everything, was you didn't see what it actually looks like for a student athlete to come in and go all the way to graduation and how different they go through that stage of life.
Right.
And they are different. There's a reason why seniors have some big value in college sports. And I appreciate that now. At the time, I was like I believed him. I was like, I don't have the appreciation of what you're telling me. So there was some consideration with Barney, but at the same time, I had the same draws to go back home, my alma mater, my family, and it took some stress off other pieces of life while you're living as an assistant coach in youth sports salary. And I think it's a bit better now. I think people are doing more now, but at that time we didn't have many full-time assistants. So we were piecemealing life together to make this work.
For sure. Was Les pretty open about him applying at Acadia, or was it like, hey, by the way, I got the job, or?
Oh, this is a good one. Yeah, no, for sure. I think we were in tight enough that like helped with the process. Like, this is our application, here's your application, but here's the thing, the main points I think we could say, if I have any insight, what I think how the school like values. And most times all college jobs, you've got to be able to recruit. Some of them are going to have some expectations on you to like perform off court things like that. How you're going to help support academics, et cetera. But like you got to recruit. That's like the number one thing in college. So with Les, I could share some insight of like what I thought the demographics and the main hubs of recruiting were for Acadia, like what spots he's going to have to nail and attack to fit the rest of the school. So we were in together. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. I think too, because he still valued what your thoughts and opinions were, right? And was like, hey, this guy was on this campus. He knows more about the school probably than I do. So what can I need to hear him. Whereas some people might just go, you know what, I'm going to let him know that I'm applying for the job, but I'll kind of just do it on my own and figure it out, right? And so I think it just speaks volumes as to what he was like and how he valued his staff. That's awesome. And so
well said.
So then we go back, man.
And then we go back. We got to Acadia and we did. Gosh, again, like I felt like it was pretty cool. Like I look back at the experiences I got, and we come into Acadia, and they had hired, I don't know if I should say name or not, but they'd hired a really great coach, but he had some other challenges, and it didn't go well in that era, so they had to remove him. And when those types of scenarios arise, usually it's just like a bit of a mess in the locker room, the team makeup, just like things didn't go well. Not all of that person was a mess, but just what people expected coming in. So you just got a lot of disgruntled people.
Yeah.
And like I said, you get a whole new experience. You went from a team that hadn't won, a team that was always winning, and now you had one that was like, you guys got to tear this down right now. And I remember the part that hit me the most of that when Les was doing it is we finished basically the tryout phase of our first year. So you get that off season, you bring in your recruits, and you've got, when you're new to a school, you just got a smudge board of people coming in. It's just like all over the place trying to see who's going to stick.
If you're a basketball player out there in the Lower Mainland or BC in general, and you're looking for somewhere to play, we have a proud sponsor, and that is PGC Hoops. You can find them at pgchoops.ca. And the thing that makes them unique and that we're proud to sponsor them and them be a sponsor of us is it's a true nonprofit basketball organization found in the east side of Vancouver. The mission is cost-effective elite basketball for all. Find the website, take a look, register your kids, register yourself, look for the programs. And if you have any questions, reach out to me and we can contact you with the right people. This is a good program for the right reasons. We appreciate you, PGC Basketball.
And so many so many people are just like, they sniff that and they're like, well, this is my chance to, maybe people that have been cut for a couple of years, they're showing up. They're like, they don't know who I am yet, they all come out of the woodwork, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But we went through the tryout and we had a guy these stories, I found them so interesting when I look back, as we had a guy that would have been a 4th or 5th year senior guard for that team. And he had been with the program for a while, and he was like just a great human. And I remember Les being like, we're cutting him though. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, he's for sure would start for us. And Les was like, for sure he would. But like, he's at the level where he would win us 1 or 2 more games this year. So if we're going to go 4-16 and he makes us 5-15, all it does is eat up 30 minutes a game from the people that we need to get us to a playoff level in year 2. And I was like, wow, like at the time, what great perspective of like what we're trying to do here in this year. So he's like, we have to balance a little bit of people to keep our locker room in check, but we had the 2 or 3 that we thought were that. So he's like, I'm not taking 7 and just like blocking our young ones from getting opportunity.
And for you, I think I think early on being a young coach, that's so huge. Something that was hard for me too is like, being prepared to have the tough conversation. Like not you got to lean into it, right? There's a way to go about it. You don't have to be an asshole, right? You don't have to be rude, but like he could have easily just been like, "Oh, I'll tread lightly here." And he was like, "No, man, I want this program and I want it to happen now." And so he wasn't afraid to lean in. I think that's huge. So many things that you're taking in. Like, I mean, you're like 3 years in here, man. Like
Totally.
you know, and it's like wild story.
I was on a crash course, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I just lucked out as I went through these phases. And you know,
did you ever find yourself being just like, "Whoa, this is a lot," or were you just so into it that it was like just fun every day for you?
Both for sure. They were for sure, especially the year on the men's side with Brandon. I think
Woo!
the
Yeah, buddy.
yeah, there's the women's side because their situation there's like the expectations were lower, so the pressures were lower. So every team has challenges and things that come up. What we had less of being the team where they were coming from the women's side was like less ego, so less conflict that way.
Yeah.
And you had less expectations from the outside world, so there's less pressures from both like people watching them and their families.
Like, you only lost by 12 this weekend.
Yeah,
you didn't lose by 41. Like, way to go. You're like, yeah. Whereas,
so every team has its challenges, but you didn't have those. You went to the men's team and like, bam, those came on. And there were some people on that team that didn't have all aspects of their life together. So you had stuff come at us that I was like, wow, like this is part of coaching too, eh? Like people figuring out their academics, people making sure they were staying on the straight and narrow off the court, like, and what all that looks like as teammates. And we even had some challenges of like inner team dynamic conflicts, which
for sure,
again, I'm trying to like protect some people's things, but you look back and you think these are all great learnings. And as a young coach, some of those things were even intimidating just to like live in it, because you could have two really great players who clearly were having a challenge of just coexisting in the team and on campus. And, you know, us trying to balance, okay, well, our job is to get them to come out here still and win games. But at the same time, we can't have, well, are we going to win games that they're going to like hate each other? Or like what has to happen here to get people feeling comfortable? So you go through a time and you go back to Acadia and it's different. It's more like the women's one again. Like there's almost like these pressures are off, but now you get this challenge, like, but now we got to find some people that can win.
Yeah. And you're dealing with all these dynamics. I think the thing that people overlook, right, is like, okay, great. Like you had some talented guys at Brandon. You're, you know, probably top 5 in the nation for most of the year, but you're like, you've got conflict and there's other things happening, but they're still also getting to know these guys. Like you didn't bring them in. You haven't been coaching them for 4 years. Like Les's point, like you got to see what it's like to have someone come 1 through 5, or maybe take a redshirt year 1 through 6. It's like, we're trying to win. We're trying to get to know these guys. We're trying to have them trust us and we trust them, and deal with like, it's a schmodule, man. It's a lot.
For sure. Yeah. There's a lot that happens in those things. And whenever you inherit into like a new team, I think, you know, having been through enough now, and I look back, I think for coaches and a program at the college level to truly get like their culture embedded, it almost takes a full cycle of like people that have come through, be done. And as these things are starting to get passed down, that's when they're really becoming lived. So you're working hard and driving things for 4 or 5 years, but it's not really till like 6 or 7 that I think you really get the full. And I think college is different than other settings, but I think as a college, that's where the people really get to like have their impact on what their culture looks like, and they're recruiting people to fit their style. And I think it takes that time to really, so it's breeding itself and just like growing itself as it goes through. So we're doing the opposite right now. We're like one shop, one stop every time. So you're just like these guns for, Les was like a gun for hire to turn a program around. And he did that. He always got his team better the first year. So it was learning some lessons, but I was not living that element yet of like what you need to do over a period of time. Just hadn't had the experience. Yeah. So we landed Acadia. We go through a tough year. And then the next year, Les has got us ramp right back up. And then, you know, over my time in Acadia, we get the, within the CIS U Sport, it was around the time we transitioned there, I think. But in this bubble of the Final 8, we had the upset win over Carleton in this era, and then lost to Brock in the finals on the next day. And I think that was really one of the big flagship moments for us as like a duo at Acadia time. Where we got to Acadia within a couple of years, we're on that stage. And I'll always remember the pain of like losing, you know, you get that climatic win in the semis but you lose in the finals and you carry that forever still. And the amount of people that talk to us about what a win over Carleton, and you're just like, for sure.
Yeah.
We finished second. Like
It is. It's a tough turnaround, man. That's a challenging tournament, 3 days, and like just the Sunday game's always a little earlier too, right? For TV wise. But talk about that experience, before we jump into you becoming like a head coach, just sort of you talked about going back home, being back home, and then having that school. Talk about the pride and what you felt just sort of stepping into the Metro Center and in that quarterfinal game, first round, and being a part of that. It must have been pretty, kind of goosebumps, hair standing up kind of moment.
It was unreal. And, the Metro Center carried. So this is a fun thing. Like if I go back to my childhood pieces of like not really being a true, like basketball not being my number one, liked it. But one thing that I did every March was go to both the AUS and the Final Eight with my dad. That was like a thing that we did. And my brother didn't even go. Like he didn't have the interest. It was like a thing as a child that I shared with my father. Just the two of us would go in and out every weekend for that. And
love that.
Yeah. So it was like so cool. And, and part of that, I was at the age where like my dad would buy me like a shirt or a sweater to go with it. And I would wear that with such pride for like the rest of that summer, like it was, this was and for me, it was more the event with my father. So to take this whole thing of what would really symbolize the return to Acadia for me and how this really started just to become like ingrained within me, the Carleton game, Peter Layton hits that 3-pointer. I don't know how much this everyone's gonna remember, but he hits this 3-pointer just over like Ryan Bell, who's like probably one of the best defenders that had played in youth sport. It just his job, like chasing people off screen, shouting shots. So to get it off was by like a hair, and Peter's release was so quick. So it was just like such a moment, and it casual. And anyway, it goes through. Acadia wins, blah blah blah. But it's on. Oh, I hope I get the broadcaster right. I think because I'm one of the broadcasters, they're nightly recaps, but it actually does a pan shot of the Acadia crowd, and it's my mother crying that Acadia has won. And I'm like, oh, this is so symbolic for like my personal emotions of like what's happened here too. You come back to Acadia, we get the program back on the stage where people want. It, for sure painful that we finished second, but we're back on the stage. We're playing in the national championship game, and then here's my mother living in the crowd in the seats where I used to sit beside my father, all emotional, and it's on national TV, which no one else would pick up. It's my mother, but we do as a family, right? So you're like, wow, what a cool moment. So we're trying to get that like 30-minute segment from like, I don't remember if it's a TSN or the score, like
probably
can you give
TSN,
it to us?
yeah. It would have been TSN. They usually did the semi, yeah.
So like we need that. And they're like, oh yeah, you want the 1 minute recap? Sure. And we're like, yeah, we need it. It was such a, I don't know, just like one of those moments that we still remember and carry of like just the symbolism of full circle of something we had as a childhood activity to now living it down on the court and my parents watching me. So I was like, it was really cool.
I love that, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the same for me. My dad would always let us skip a day and we would go to the BC championships down at the Agrodome, right? We usually go on the Thursday because we would go to the semis on the Friday night, but just spend the whole day watching basketball, right? And like those memories, and that's amazing. I love that. Great story.
Yeah, they're fun stuff. You got to remember these things as parents now, right? Like
I know, right?
They actually have an impact you don't realize.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to the day that I can take my kid and skip the day of school and watch basketball, but we'll see.
You got to the beginning, you got to remember that too. Is like your kid going to get like, it's going to be coach's son just like loves it all, or like, nah, I don't want to do basketball. Well,
yeah. And you know what? I honestly could give two hoots, man. As long as he's in something, like he does basketball right now and he seems to be okay with it. He loves parkour. He'll climb on anything, right?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So it's like, you know what? We just kind of tell him if we're going to start something, and it's 10 sessions, you do the 10 sessions. If you don't like it after that, we can move on, right? But if we're going to, and then whatever he chooses to do, he chooses to do. But,
cool.
Whatever.
I'll cheer for basketball, but I support you letting him make his own.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie and tell you that I don't want him to, but I'm not gonna press it on him, right? Like he's starting to come to practices. He came to our game last night. He's around the boys. Like we've had the fortune of going to Maui a couple times with the team, and so he's come on those roadies, and so he's seeing it, right? And the guys all say hi to him, and so that part of it is I think fun for him, but he won't sit and watch a game with me yet, like on TV. He's rather just play Lego or do something else, right? So
that's okay. Valuing it in person, having these memories all shape what it'll become, like his passions. No
Absolutely.
doubt.
Yeah, agree. Right, man. Well, let's talk about like kind of just
Yeah.
sort of becoming a head coach, and then you end up you're talking about, obviously there's a sense of pride. You've mentioned it so many times about Acadia, and then it's just like you find yourself coaching in the AUS, and like it's like super cool,
Yeah.
man. Yeah,
Yeah. And then, then the transition happens like after that year. So we win a
yeah.
silver medal. Then my job again is we had some stuff on the inside that had to be cleaned up. So I've got to go through another transition year of Acadia. So this, I was really comfortable. I was like, I know how to do this and play the bad guy now. I've got plenty of experience. And then I went through that phase, and we got ourselves back after that, back to playoffs, and we had an upset win. So we got ourselves the Nationals, and then I think we did 4 straight before I left. But I can swear to you that when I was at Acadia there in like my 4th, 5th year, I thought that's where I was going to be forever. I was so happy to have the opportunity to be coaching basketball full time at my alma mater. My parents down the street within like a 30-minute drive. My brothers down there, and at that time had met what would be my future wife as well, who was also there. I was just like, I'm set. I'm living the dream of what I wanted. We're having success at Acadia. I was really, really excited, and we were. I don't know what the right word is. We thought we were getting close. We never got over the hump, so it could just be our own biases. But we thought we were getting close with Carleton or giving them a run at nationals. But it felt like every year they came out on top. And there's one year in particular we thought we had them right on the ropes, and then Elliot Thompson hit back-to-back threes, and it was for sure a coaching error. We had almost left of like we were leaving him and trying to play the pass between them, hoping that it would get to somebody else. But they got it to Elliot both times, and he made them both. Timeout was a little too late to get out of that. But I remember that because he was a Maritime kid. And, you had that moment of like, you're back home, almost like we talked before, but now you're the head coach at these AUS and national championships in Halifax. Everything seems set. And the Maritime kids hitting a shot. You're just like, this is really cool. This is like really what you have now. Since I've gotten into basketball, these are like the dreams of what you want to transpire around you. Except Elliot be on our team would have been better, but
Sure, that's fair.
So with that, things were going great, and then the opportunity came up with Canada Basketball, and they had posted. I don't know if I'll ever know the inner workings on their side, but the women's side was looking for a performance analyst, and I don't think, in hindsight, that any coaches applied for it. Was what happened. I think it was all analyst people. Which made my resume unique. So it's also like benefited me.
Yeah.
But I saw the opportunity, I guess, different than others in that I was like, I really think the chance to work with the Olympic team and our country's best athletes is such a cool opportunity. I'm like, to be a part of our national organization, I was like, I'm willing to do whatever you guys want me to do for that opportunity. And in the interview process, they had asked they had made clear, like, we want you to know that if you get this role, it does not mean you're on bench. It does not mean you're active with the athletes. Like, none of that stuff is necessarily part of this role. And I was like, no problem. Like, I am so excited to get the chance.
I ran the clock for the U16 Nova Scotia provincial team and didn't even deserve to be there. So shoot, man, give me whatever you want.
Totally.
This is Team Canada. Like, yeah.
And I was, and I was like, the chance to go now. Again, you link back to your old thing. The Olympics had always been something that had really pulled me and attracted me. So I was like, the chance to work with these athletes that are doing this is like, I was all in. And
now, are you like a planner at this point? Like, do you have goals in mind? Are there sort of are there dreams and hopes? Or are you kind of like just taking each coaching year as it comes along? Or as you sort of probably a few years into Acadia, you feel like, okay, I'm like, this is for me, I can do this. Like, it doesn't matter what level. Is the mindset change? Or is it like one day you see this and you're like, oh, that'd be kind of dope. Like, just curious about that part of it. Yeah.
No, great question. For sure, planner and goal setting. Like, I think everyone has it in some lights, but I'd probably be more like the theoretical side of it. I love to have my stuff written down. I love to have it like mapped out. This is my personality. And at Acadia at that time, before the Canada Basketball job posted, my goals were more like I was establishing ranges in which I want our team, like our good years. I want us to get a national championship. I want to be at nationals like this many out of 5. And I want our bad years to be like 4th in the AUS as our rebuilding year. Like, if we have a down year, that's what it looks like. And
Mm.
we had targets where I was like, I want to make sure I get like the best kid in Nova Scotia, like at least 2 to 3 years was like a goal that we were setting. So again, just more being like, I had these things mapped out and we were tracking, because I truly believe we were going to be there for the long haul. And our president at the time at Acadia was Ray Ivany, who did a tremendous job with the school. That's, immaterial, but what he was, it was really inspiring for me, because he was helping us look at ways like, how do we make the men's basketball programs financially sustainable as well? Like, so we can fund our own scholarships, because recruiting is so critical. So what are some things we do? Because we don't have there's not TV money in Canada like there is in the States. So the landscape's a little different of how we make it work. And anyway, we were trying to find those things as well. Like, how do we generate some income over the next 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And these are the things that were driving me at that time. I was fully invested. And like I said, this opportunity came up and it really just like turned everything. And I was almost searching for someone in my life close to me to tell me that it was a bad decision. Like, am I chasing something silly? Like, it seems like I've got everything ingrained right here at Acadia, but like, all my family was kind of like, no, it sounds great. Like, my soon-to-be wife, like, yeah, it sounds great. Like, everyone's just like, yeah, go for it. And I was like, okay. I mean, it's no one playing devil's advocate, then I got to try. And again, I can't speak for them for their side, but I think Canada basketball on the flip had gone into this position intending to hire someone that would just do stats and pieces on the side. But when they got my resume, the position just like shifted a bit. They're like, oh, if you can do those things and be on staff, we're actually getting a couple of things at one. And now we'll have in that structure, a full-time coach with our senior program to handle those things that go on during the pro seasons. And it just kind of like morphed over time, which was I've been really lucky how these things have gone. So I went back, at the beginning, I mentioned the key to like players. My time at Acadia, when Les was there, we had some really great players. And one of those standouts was Leo Santil, who broke like the rebounding record that time. And he was incredible. And then I was fortunate, like we had many, but one of them was like Owen Clausen, who's now still playing for our men's national program at times. And these people relay the success. They give us the opportunities. Like, if Leo didn't break the rebounding record, I probably don't get the next Acadia opportunity. Owen doesn't come and play so well for us in that era, I probably don't get this opportunity with Canada basketball. So I realize that I've been very fortunate throughout my path, and I try and take the most of all these things that are shown and cross me. And like, I try and make the most of these experiences. But
I mean, give yourself some credit. Give yourself some credit, though, dude. I mean, I know you're applauding the many people around you, but if you guys don't give Leo and Owen the confidence to do what they do as coaches, then they don't succeed that way. Like it all goes together. And I know what you're saying. You're saying the right things and doing it right, but also like, there's no way Canada basketball is morphing a position to save money if they think you're a scrub or a bad dude. You know what I mean? Like, they obviously see value in you. They see hard work. They see someone with a growth mindset. Like, they see someone that they want to represent the Maple Leaf, right? And I think so. It's not Nova Scotia club. You coach in 8 to 12 teams. It's like, this is the upper echelon of basketball. So I don't know. I think you give yourself, and many people have spoken like you saying, "Oh, I'm luck," but I also think, good things come to good people too, right? So luck and everything, it's all got to fall together in the right places. But you also were willing to stick your neck out and go for it, right? Like, you jumped on a plane and came to Brandon, and then you followed the same guy back out east. And then you're like, I think I like this opportunity. And your family was kind of like, and you're like, I'm still going to go for it, right? Like, I guarantee you there are many people in front of their laptop, Steve, that were like, I don't know if I want to apply. Like, it seems cool. And I've had the same moments myself, but you were able to stick your neck out and do it. So, at some point when you're retired and old and grumpy, you can give yourself a little pat on your back. How's that?
I appreciate that. I do. I've tried to take, learnings from where I've been and the people that have been around me. And I've been very fortunate, because you have to be to get through this path. But, like we said at the beginning, if I look back now, I've really had like quite an experience going through our system in Canada. Like,
that's one way to put it.
I've done the minor. I've had a chance to do the provincial teams, the Canada Games. I've gone through the high school system in a couple provinces. I've done the youth sports system now, and now I get a chance to represent our country. And as you mentioned in the beginning, I've able to lead our 18 team, a Commonwealth team, a Pan Am team, and I've been with our senior team for 3 World Cups now, 2 Olympics, and hopefully in February we take care of business and I make it our 3rd. So it's been a really, really cool ride. And I think the part that I've enjoyed the most, that's always kind of pushed me forward to where I'm in right now, is when you get around the athletes, or you get the opportunity to be around high performing athletes, it's so motivating to see how hard how hard these women work. Like, their commitment level is unreal. Like, when you leave, you just think, I have to do more to help. They're willing to sacrifice so much in their lives. And I started on the men's side. Those were the first opportunities that I had as a head coach. And now that I'm on the women's side and I've really had a chance to like live it and see the different things in terms of like challenges they face, I could never leave now. I could never leave. You just see the fight they go through, and there's so many layers to this. But even the small side of like the income they make, it's so much easier to make these decisions as a if you're gonna get a contract to get $1 million and it's like, well, we'll pay you to live in Spain. You're like, well, okay, like that's enough to do it. But on the women's side, you're not getting paid like that. So you have to do it for a passion. Like, I love to do it. And I know that I'm sacrificing living in another country, which is fun for a year, but maybe not for a decade. Like, it's it puts a strain on many aspects of your life, but these athletes are just so committed to like honing their own skills, getting better. And in many cases with us, representing their country. So it just drives them for incredible things. So anyway, I find it quite inspiring. I kind of got off on a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but
I love it.
Yeah, it drives me for sure.
So you got someone like Kayla, who we recently had on, right? It's like, she's willing at kind of, she's getting longer in the tooth in her career, mid-season, to just pack up and fly to Miami and do the tryout for you guys to try to qualify. And you're sitting there, you've been there ahead of time or whatever. You're like, how are you not going to do everything you can to get this woman ready to compete? Like, I'll get you up, I'll get you the food, whatever it is I need, right? And you make such a great point, and I know, and I think it's great that you're touching on some of the things, and it's not, our job is not to kind of compare, but I think it is good to bring light to the struggles and the difference between the men and the women's game, right? Because it's just true, and it's great. It's like, you see them playing overseas, but when you think about it, it's like, the difference is it's there, and we can do so much better. But it's people like yourselves, and like you say, props to all the ladies that are just starting out, like the young killers like Sila, and the people that have stuck it out for a long time. Like the Kias, the Kim Smiths, like Kia's torn her knee, and she would have a reason to never put on the Canada jersey again, and no one would question her for a second. But there's something there, right? And
just shows up.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. What an opportunity for you, man.
Yeah, and like Kayla is a great example. She was home for the holidays, maybe got 5-6 days from her Baur's club to come home, and she calls us like, hey, I want to do a workout. Can you guys do 7 a.m.? And we're like, of course. Like, whatever. If you want to do that on your days home, like, of course we'll be there. So it drives you. Like, we watch her games in Baur's and our games to see what things are similar, what things can we tidy up. And this is the commitment that she has too, right? Like, I'm home. I want some more stuff to bring back with me to continue to refine myself before we're back at it in February. So
it's awesome.
It's quite the crew. He has been through a lot. She shows up. Everyone's like, it's nonstop.
Yeah, man. And I think it speaks to the culture that you've all created too, right? If it was something that they weren't drawn to, they wouldn't do it. Yes, it's playing for your country and there's something there, but Canada Basketball and the staff within that have created something that makes them want to come back too, if that makes sense, which I think is huge.
I miss this marker by like a little bit, but I still feel it. I feel like the Allison McNeil era for women's basketball in this country reshaped us. And we had almost to our point in the college one earlier, like it takes 5-6 years to shape that. I think it's again different in a pro or national team context than college, but I think she built that. She did it in our national team, and she had convinced and had got the buy-in of this group of athletes, like Kim being part of it, Lizanne, Tamara, Shona, many others, Miranda, just committed to that life to get to the next level. And they went from an unranked group to back-to-back Olympic qualifications at that time. And I think Allison was part of the first one, and then Lisa took the second and third ones. But I think Allison was a huge piece in that culture, and the athletes. I'm not discounting what they gave to it too, but I think Allison was one of the drivers to get that going. And my take from this, and again, I haven't lived it, but I now live in the culture that I think she's built. So I can share what I think still carries is what I think she brought was she fought for the spaces where women weren't being treated equally. And I think her just overall drive to fight for them, and they truly felt it. She fights for us, inspired them to also fight for themselves. And I think that's a powerful thing. If you're willing to fight for yourself and what you think you deserve and should do and what it takes to be better, like that's also part of it. They're willing to fight, and they pass that to the next generation of like, you got to fight for us to get these things, and don't forget where we've been. And I just think that went through Allison, and then Lisa had obviously lived it with her and carried it right through that generation too. And now it's ingrained, as you said, like people are passing it. The athletes are passing it to the next ones themselves.
Woo!
Yeah, Allison, hey.
Church on a Friday, ladies and gentlemen, taking us to church on a Friday. Allison, we're looking at you. Girl.
I think
she's been ducking me for so long. I've run into her clinics that we've both spoken at. I don't know. I'm not sure if my story. I'm like, listen,
your story's great,
right? I believe for Allison McNeil to say her story is not good enough would be the kids would say cap. That's cap.
For sure. I think she's changed the whole culture in women's basketball, and now it's up to other people.
I love that shout out to you, man. I love that shout out. That was and you're right.
People
it is
have
up
to live
people.
it. She can't carry it forever, but I think she got us here. So I for sure her story is worthwhile. Come on, Allison.
Let's go. Okay. Before we do some lightning round, I have two questions that have just kind of come up in my brain, if you're okay. So I'll put you on the spot. So someone who's a young and up and coming coach, what would be some advice that you would be willing to give that person based on your experience and what you've seen? Someone who wants to learn, grow the game. Maybe they don't even want to coach at the post-secondary level, but they just want to learn and grow. And two, just talk about knowing that nobody on your staff is satisfied yet, but the time that in the small window, although it has been long, that you've been with the team and the program, how cool is it to see how elevated it's become? And you talked on Allison, but I think it's pretty special. So those are two questions. They're heavy, they're loaded, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of them.
They're great. I think for the first one, my advice would be don't shy away from any task, and any task that you are able to get or opportunity you have is do it the best you can. I think there's always merit in, if you nail your job, this will lead to your other opportunities, whatever ones you want, like whatever that might be. So as you said, if you want to get to college, this might pay that for you. If you don't want to do that, that's also fine. If you want to get this team, that's great. But I think do the job that you have the best that you can. Don't worry about what's next. And I think it sounds cliche and sometimes, and people say stuff, but I truly believe it. And in other coaches that I have worked with, like closer, who have had aspirations of getting into like the NBA or WNBA. And one thing that I've always talked about with them is get in the door is what you need. So get in the door. And then if you do your job, you'll move yourself up through there. But getting in the door is the hardest piece in these elements or these different environments. So when you get an opportunity, just be great at that. And people bring those people with them. I mean, I'm proof in that story with Les with me too, but I feel the same. I can speak from my own experiences. I've really valued the staff members that I can turn to, and you trust they're going to do what you've given them. And I think that's my number one advice. Nail the job you have, and it'll lead you where it's supposed to.
Whatever you're doing right now, listening at work, rolling in your whip, going for a walk, whatever it is, hang on for a sec. You like jerseys? You like stance socks? You like throwback? You like shoes? You like anything related to basketball? Hit up ATOB Ball. And if you're not able to be there in store at Langley Event Center, check them out on the web. And I guarantee you'll find something you like. Give us a mention and you'll never know. Shout out to our boy Jeff. ATOB Ball for life.
I love that. And that's such related in basketball, we preach to our kids. And you think of the senior women's national team, you've got 12 or whatever of the best women in our country coming together to play, but some are going to be the star, some are going to be the 12th, some are going to be the 10th, but where they play on their pro team or wherever they are, they're probably upper echelon. But it's like, be the best in your role. Like, be the best in your role and embrace it, right? There's so
For
many
sure.
times you've shared in your story, Steve, where you could have just been like, yeah, you know what? I'm in Brandon and I don't really know what to do with this high level men's team. I'll just shy away. And you're like, no, you know what? I am going to take whatever Les wants me to track. I'm going to track the absolute crap out of that stat.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
right? So there's no flaws. So he can't say, oh, you missed that one or whatever it is. Like, I think it's such a powerful thing you're saying. It's easy to say, but there's the words are so strong. It's really well put, man. Yeah.
Thank you.
Love that.
The second one, I can speak to some of this experience, having lived it both like through my experiences of like where our expectations, just like how we've raised our own expectations. And I've also been able to live what some other people, like I've been able to see Kim and Shona, finish up their careers with those same things, their expectations being changed. And some of this I was part of and some of it I joined later, but I think it's so incredible for basketball in our country as a whole that these expectations have changed. So we've had people go through here and we have people still playing or wrapping up their playing or just finished playing that played with our women's program at a time where like they couldn't even get invited to the exhibition tournaments. We weren't at that level. So they couldn't get to games. They couldn't get through the Americas qualifiers. Cuba was too much. Dominican, these countries, Mexico, whoever, Argentina, Brazil, it was too much. And that's changed. We go to an Americas now and we expect to win. And because oftentimes the US will send a college team. So we're like, we can do this. Like we can win. These are like the level at which like medal is what is for us. And if we don't get that, we're extremely disappointed. And that's great. That means the basketball has risen, which it has. We have a greater athlete pool, which is true. Our opportunities on the world stage, we just finished 4th in the world. So you're like, the expectations are way higher. Now, what does come with that, as we all know, is when you raise the expectations, is the heartbreak can be a little more when you miss. And I think Tokyo, as an example, didn't go the way we would have liked. All of us internally, there were a lot of factors, and none of which are excuses. Like look back to what could have been different. And when it was done, I think we left just feeling like not good, like not just how we performed, but like we just weren't our best selves. And
was it overwhelming? Because the hype was pretty big, man. Like it really snowballed into a big thing. I mean, maybe you didn't feel it. I don't know. Did you guys feel that at all?
I probably was a little less than some, but I think I think within our team, yes. And I think different people that sat differently, like without putting on any one person, but I think you take these scenarios of someone knowing it's their last crack. That's a different pressure than someone who's experiencing maybe their first time. And there were people in our locker room that when it was happening and when it was done, that were like, I have a hard time looking at some of our last year people in the face because the experience didn't go the way we wanted. We all left like we weren't at our best. We didn't come in here at our best. We didn't perform at our best. We didn't handle COVID the best. All of it was just not our best. So you left there. I think all teams know, right? Like you go into a season and you know roughly where you are. And when you finish in the high end, you're excited. When you finish the low end, you're disappointed. And meaning some teams can finish 8th and sometimes you're like, that was pretty good for us. And sometimes you finish 3rd and you can be like, that was really disappointing. Our placement, but also the field was on the really disappointing for us. And I think that was really difficult for us to look at some people that have been like, you've changed this program. And this was the farewell song that we delivered for you. And it just felt like with the raised expectations, it just stings a lot. It stings a lot. And you
such an interesting point, man.
Like you take the lessons, right? What we're going to try and do, but you're like, but time doesn't allow those lessons to be applied for everyone.
Yeah.
The program gets it, but not all of us get it.
Yeah. Interesting. I never thought of that, but it's like, I'm a Chicago Cubs guy. So like, it's like, oh, the Cubbies, they're the fun-loving Wrigley Field. And then we win the World Series and everyone, and then like the standard changes, right? And now it's like, for some reason, I went through, 25 years of absolute disappointment every year. Like, oh, they stink, maybe. And then they win the World Series and break a streak of over 100 years. And then it's like, oh, we only made the wild card this year, or and
Yeah.
I'm like, which is like, it's good because you're relevant, but also you're right, it does change the whole. That's
Hmm.
great reflection, man. Wow.
And different pressures show up differently with these
Yeah,
different teams too. So it's, yeah, I
and
think
then
like,
your staff's forget the athlete side of it.
yeah.
Um, when you guys as a group sat down again, did it change how you've gone forward as a group in terms of we really need to tap into everyone's individual needs for us to come together? Or like, has it changed things or made coaching
For
different
sure.
or whatever? Yeah. Yeah.
There was a lot of reflection from that
Hmm.
one from all angles. And again, people can approach it differently because if
Yeah.
you were leaving, you can almost be like, you can share your comments, but be like, I'm done with it now.
Yeah.
And where if you're coming back, you're like, well, this can't happen again. So I think everything has its own, everyone has their own personal lens they bring to everything. And what was really unique in Tokyo for us, so I'll say this first, is
Hmm.
we all want the higher expectations. Of
Of
course,
course.
it's
Yeah.
better than the other, but there
Hmm.
are challenges that come with it too. There are pressures that come with it. We want those. We want those pressures, and you just got to live with the other side when it doesn't go the way you want. The the tricky part for Tokyo, I was like struggling with my words there, but because of the COVID protocols on the Olympics, I don't know if this is good or bad. I don't know.
Hmm.
We were eliminated, but anyone could, as a team, could test positive and then they'd be out. So we actually had to stay in the village for an extra day, living in our own, or maybe 2 days actually, because
Hmm.
there's a day off between pool play and crossovers, and we're not in those.
Hmm.
But we have to stay as the emergency team. And as a national team, we don't typically do that. We done playing and everyone disperses back to where they're going next. So as a national team, you live in like hotels often, and by the time things are done, you're needing a break from each other. Like
Sure.
human nature is like, let's get
That's
back to our
fair.
own places, our own spheres.
Yep.
We can get a little independence, autonomy in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
But you add in that we're not getting that break and the heartbreak and the frustration. So you've probably got some people looking at each other a little bit like we wouldn't normally do, but you're in the heat of it right now. Like, I'm still a little pissed. But we took the time. We're like, well, we're here. Let's talk about it a little bit. And there was a lot of emotion that came out from some really powerful people in our team bubble there, where they could share like disappointment of how it went. And again, to the credit of like the leadership we had in that locker room, there was very little finger pointing going on. It was really just some reflection of like, I hate that we weren't our best.
Hmm.
Like right before COVID hit, and this again, I'm not putting this on COVID, I'm just saying what our reality was, is like right before it hit in that February qualifier, we felt like we were firing. We won that window and we felt destined for a Tokyo podium. That's how we were playing, but we never got back to that. Whatever we couldn't muster that back. We were just out of sync the 1 year later. And
You stole my point here. I was going to say, I think the good part of finally the men picking up the pace, but the women being relevant on the national stage has opened our eyes to like how hard it really is. Like to actually think about, you're peaking at a moment and you qualify for the biggest world event, but then you got to get it together a year later when people are a year older, like lives
yeah,
change, like
yeah,
Kim's got a baby, like there's
yeah,
so many
yeah,
things, like
yeah, a lot.
someone blows a wheel and you got to bring someone else in or whatever happens, right? Like
Yeah,
it's a challenging thing to almost re-peak, right?
for
Because
sure,
because you've had those moments where you're like, man, if we can put this in a box and fast forward it to 300 days, it's over.
for sure.
But that doesn't happen.
We felt that like that
Yeah.
February could have gone to that like May, June, when we start getting ourselves back together into a July Olympics. We felt great, but we had all those factors you mentioned all just start to like get away from us a bit. And and I think that was the biggest disappointment in the locker room afterwards. So again, we get to this weird scenario, we're still there, we're debriefing as a group. And I think ultimately that was the main sentiment of like, it just sucks that we weren't our best selves. So if we were our best selves and we finished 9th, then that's something. We got ourselves the Olympics, and look at us. Our expectations are that we're here all the time. But I think our expectations and our reality was we were better than that. So it just didn't end the way it just, and it like I said, there's people coming back. You're like, okay, we get a chance to learn from this. And people that played that and then could return and play at the World Cup and finish 4th, you had a chance to grow from those things and get some redemption. That's almost a great story in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But some people didn't. And those are the ones where you're like, there's some people there like him that had put in a lot of time to get us here, to earn these expectations. And then we didn't show our best self in your last go, which is like another disappointing moment.
And it's the grueling part of sport, right? It's not
Yeah.
an easy thing to do. It's not for everybody. So yeah,
So
good,
true.
Good reflection, man. Great answers. Love it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, buddy. Okay, let's get into it here, though. Let's find some real stuff about life.
Real
like,
stuff.
Yeah, man. Like, you got kids. I don't know if they're into cereal or whatever, but for you, what's the greatest cereal of all time?
Oh, cereal. Okay. I loved cereal growing up. I eat it all. I'd eat it all. My kids now are into like the chocolate ones, which is not me. But what I liked as a kid was Wheaties. And we had the slogan caught in our family. So
did you dump the sugar on it? Or
yeah,
just straight up? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We were into like what was it? The cereal of champions. What was this one? Then we used to like cut the cereal box out, stick people's faces on it, and mail. We didn't have Photoshop back then or Instagram, so we had to mail it to our cousins to be like, look at this,
Yeah.
So the cereal was like into our like ribbing amongst the family too. So that was for sure the favorite.
Wow, cereal turned into an actual thing. That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
Are you books or movies?
Oh, I think since I now have the kids, I do a little bit less of both. But I do read right now. We get some time on planes and that, and I'm reading Built to Move right now by Kelly Starrett, and I'm trying to keep myself healthy and moving around as I age, make sure that if I have grandkids, that I'm still out there playing around with them too. So just trying to find ways to tweak my lifestyle. So I'm actually reading it for the third time, just trying to continue to pick up some things of what I do to counteract how much sitting I do and other pieces that life throws at us.
Sure. Do you have any other books like that you go back to?
So he has the two that I read, which is the Built to Move and then the Supple Leopard. Those are the two that I'll read often. And then usually I don't read things a second time after that. I like the excitement of new things.
Sure. Nice.
But I do like, they call them self-help books. Like planning, organization, being productive. These are the ones that usually draw me.
Yeah. Sure. Fair enough. Especially because, you get into that, for you, your lifestyle now and what the career path that you have is like, you're either home for extended periods of times or you're busy for extended periods of times, and finding the time to like make sure all that's valuable and still be husband and still be dad. Right. And it's true. I think, try to tell these kids that are younger that we coach, it's like the sooner you can sort of make plans and figure out a structure of your life, the better off you'll be, but they're just young, right? They just fly by the seat of their pants. And I'm like, you'll get it one day.
Like the rest of us.
Yeah, for sure. Who have been some of the most important people in your life?
I think like my wife, Vivi, has
your episode, buddy. You do this week.
Yeah, I can go whatever I want. I got a life one and a basketball one. Then if I can answer two, I don't know if you accept these ansers. I think she's been.
We'll delete it out. Who are the most important people in your life?
You don't like.
Yeah.
I think Vivi's been one for sure. I think she pushes me.
We're not cutting your wife out of the episode. I'll tell you that.
She won't know. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think she pushes me in areas where maybe I wouldn't normally take some of the risks or do things. She pushes me there. And I think she is fairly aggressive most times at pushing me, but knows the moments too where I need a little support or like, good job. So I do appreciate the balance she gives there.
Amazing.
But I think if I were to say basketball wise, it's really tough because there's a lot of people that have had such an impact for me. But if I were to narrow it to one, the one that jumps to me right away is Brian Heaney. And he was my first AD at Acadia. And
no way.
Yeah.
It's a legend there, man.
It was really cool. And for the good and bad, well, actually all good, but the bad being like sometimes living it. I mean, he gave me a shot when I probably didn't deserve it for a school like Acadia. But he did. And I really appreciate that. But second is I think he had a lot of passion for the program. He played there, and in that era, he played there and ended up getting himself to the NBA. So like he saw it as like a huge element of his life as well. And he had very fond memories, and he had a lot of vested interest in getting the program going. With him back in his name as the AD, he's like, you got to win. But he taught me a lot. He gave me a lot of lessons. He also was really tough on it, but some of those lessons I took in the moment, they had a lot of great from them. And some of them, as times passed, have like grown on me too, like stuff that he has shared. And I find myself using lines that he used with me as I was going. I was like, oh, this guy really did shape me. And I remember when he hired me, not to like go to it, but he had said, in the meeting when he called me in, like, we're going to give you this opportunity, he had said, I don't think you're ready, but I think your team's here and you're here, and I'm going to push you faster than you're going to push them. So you're going to be ready in time. I was like, okay. And at the time I was like, your ego's a little bit like, come on, man. But, looking back, I was like, no, he was right. And it worked out great. He pushed.
I love that, man. And for those that don't know the name Brian Heaney, I mean, we got a guy out here, he coaches high school. His name's Jeff Gurley. He played at St. Mary's in the 70s. And he still views Heaney as like one of his, we text each other all the time. He'll reference Heaney once a week to me. And we're talking like 40 plus years later, you're on the show talking about his mentorship for you, right?
He was incredible. He really was. I mean, he's one, he had a lot of really great perspective, ways of looking at things. And I bet he was a tremendous coach. I bet.
Yeah.
I got him in a different role, but I bet he was too.
That's awesome. Love that, man. Okay, you get some quiet time. It's you get the babysitter. You got the best seat in the house, the best venue ever, whatever your choice is. What concert are you going to? And if you have more than one, let us know.
The music's changed, I think, throughout the generations. Everyone always hates that and always makes you sound old. But I think it's just like true. Everyone just whatever we like in our generations. But I agree. I think I would lean to, I wish I'd seen Michael Jackson. I feel like he was incredibly talented, but also was like a pioneer of like turning it from like just singing to like entertainment too. I think and it's probably downplaying some other people that did that, but I felt like he really brought it to like the modern era of like entertainment as a concert, and also was like, but extremely talented and like my skills and committed to the fine details. I think he was like a Kobe type personality for music. Like I want everything correct, but also, and like today's music is a plus is very entertainment based. Like you come there's a show to entertain you. And I think Michael Jackson did both of those things. So I would have liked to have seen that in person.
I don't know how many episodes you've listened to. It's got to be getting close to like 50% of people mentioning him, which is crazy. Like, because we've had ages, backgrounds, doesn't matter. I think you nailed it with your answer. It's so true. And it's not like, I don't think you're downplaying. I think just he really was the first one, the dancing, the fireworks, the element, had it all, right? Yeah.
For all this, commercials. Yeah, we're old enough now to remember all this.
There you go. Okay, now you're going to take this however you want. You could do it like maybe you're the coach, and I know you're going to have a hard time picking 5 players, or maybe you have an answer. I can see that you're reading. You've got some notes on your board. I like this. That's the accountant in him. He came prepared. Not everybody does. Some people just fly by like it's the first time they've heard it. So do you have an answer for this question? Because I was going to tweak it for you, but I thought, nah, man, I want to see where he goes with this. So I love the way Blacktop. What do you got? What do you got for us? Come on.
Like it takes some players. Well, on the question, you prepped me that there could be a coach too, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So if I'm taking a coach, I'm taking Noelle Quinn. I think she's just close enough to being done playing that she's still going to score some points for me. So I'm taking her. But I had a few players that I was like, I think it'd be really cool. I recognize I have no business being on the court with these people, even in a pickup game. But I think Kim Smith I think it would be really cool just to be her teammate. Her leadership, her work ethic was, I've never seen anything like it. It was also my welcome to the senior moment. I think the very first practice I went was before. I'm on a rabbit hole again here, and I apologize on you.
Love it. Nope.
The very first practice I show up, they're like, here you are. This is the team. And they were getting ready at that stage. We were getting ready to go to the World Cup. So the 2014 World Cup in Turkey. And Kim was coming back from like a sprained ankle. And she was on a stationary bike, not able to practice that day. So Kim did her bike workout and prehab and all the stuff that she had to do basically to start practice. When the practice itself got to a live session, Kim, on her own desire, would just sprint whenever it was live play as hard as she could go. And then when coaches were talking, she would get into the coasting stage. They go back to sprint or live play, and she just sprinted. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been on an exercise bike before, and it's never looked like that. But also, you did it for like a 2.5 hour practice at the intensity that it's Kim to me. And I think she's been incredible in her transition of like getting the younger generation coming up, passing on the values. She's been incredible in delivering in moments that we needed. But I'll never forget this side of her, like the work ethic. And she also delivered my other like best moment of coaching. The first thing I got to do on court with the senior team wasn't the same camp, but later. And it was essentially, Lisa had a pretty good plan of like what she wanted to do with about 8 of the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, I think Shawnee did one basket, Bev might have been one, and Lisa was like overseeing. And then she's like, Steve, there's a few that really they can just shoot. Like, why don't you work on like finishing over like a defender and you can just hold the thing up? And I was like, okay, yeah, we can go do that. So basically it's like a shooting thing. My first thing, that makes sense. So like, okay, great. So I went over, I was like, we're going to do finishing over a defender. And Kim's like, this makes no sense. Do you know what you're doing? I don't finish in traffic. I make shots. I'm like, I'm so intimidated right now, but okay.
You're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, we had to like fake it, like, come on, do the drill, but like get through it. But I was like, huh. But you're right. Like, you're like, this is not what I do. I need to work on getting this shot. I was like, okay. Okay.
That is gold.
So yeah, for her, I'm taking her for sure.
Okay.
I had Bridget Carlton on there next. I thought one thing I really appreciate with Bridget is her IQ. I think she figures and problem solves stuff for everybody else. And I think if she's going to be on a team with me, we're going to need a lot of that. So figure out the mistakes I'm making and try and make it look a little bit better. She's got other assets, but this is the one I want to pull. The other one I had was Nayo, who was another BC girl. So I got 2 in there.
Yeah.
And Nayo was incredible for us.
A friend of the podcast. She
was an incredible player for us in so many things. But I picked her for none of those reasons. I picked her because I've seen her in the heat of our most tense moments, and she's stone-faced all the time. So I'm like, this is good.
Really?
You'll keep me calm. Nothing seems to faze you. I've seen her battling through injury, through tough games, through our great times. And I think the most I've ever seen is a smile. So I'm like, and then she's playing off court, incredible. But in game mode, I'm like, this is what we need to keep us focused.
Okay.
And then the last one I picked was Letitia. And I really have a respect for Letitia's willingness. And I think you touched on this earlier. I think she's really willing to do whatever it takes to win. So this pickup team we have, if I can find a way to hide in the background, it might win. So I think Letitia will fill the roles that it takes to win. I think she's winning is always her priority. And I really appreciate that about her.
Love it. Dude, that was... You were ready for that. I love it.
I was ready.
Yeah, you broke that down. No, yeah, you were prepped for that. All right. So when you get subbed out of this game, which will probably be early on, what bag of chips are you going to eat while you're watching?
Oh, I don't eat chips. I don't like chips. I'd probably eat nuts.
Did you listen to Kim's episode?
I did. Yeah. But I'm not as healthy as her. I'll do like
oranges, she says.
Celebration mix. I'll do like has like chocolate in it, but like
I don't really like chips. I like oranges. I almost fell over. I was down. I'm like, wow, this is why.
This is Kim. Like I told you before, her commitment level, her dedication is unparalleled. It's incredible.
So you'll do like okay, you going like cashews. The mix jar, like what do you
mix. I like the mix. Yeah,
okay.
Mix.
What are what are those big freaking gross ones though that nobody likes? There's something in
like
that mix.
The macadamia ones or something.
Yeah. Like I like a macadamia chopped up a little bit, but it's like those are like the pretzels in the
they're the bag fillers, right? They just like fill the bag up for you.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, we travel around. We land anywhere we land. I usually try and find a grocery store to get some sort of nuts for the.
There you go. Nice. All right. So if you could is there a hidden talent that you have out there? This is a new question. So let's listen. This is a safe space. I am not afraid of my errors. All right. I messed up. I hit stop on the recording. We're going to throw this in. The serial question and the hidden talent are new ones. So I'm off my rhythm here. So thank you. What is your hidden talent? Let's go. He's ready. Yeah. You should have called me out earlier. This is even better, though. I love it. I love it.
I thought you got it. You knew it wasn't that special. Like, this isn't that good, man. I know your talents. It's not worth it.
No. Never. What do you got?
I can speak Mandarin. So my wife's Chinese. I've been learning self-taught now for about 6 years. I've gone through the humbling process, and my kids learn it way quicker than I do. But I think I can speak well enough to survive.
So she speaks it in the house?
She does.
Awesome.
And
so good for the kids' brains.
I can speak enough to survive.
Yeah.
But I think my listening, I'm still at the stage where I translate everything. So people hear me talk, and I can gather early conversations like, hey, what's going on? Where are you from? Then they start talking really fast, and I get slowed down trying to translate everything to English, which I know is not the right approach, but that's the stage I'm still. So that's my hidden talent.
So, like, if you're bored, do you just like sit on the couch and try to like talk to your wife, and she's like, get lost to speak to me in English? I can't deal with you right now. Or how does that work?
That is how she does that. Yeah, she doesn't do it. Instead, my approach has been
it's like, there's apps out there, babe. Get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. This is apps. And I watch, you know what I watch, which is like also humbling, but like when we do our travel, I watch cartoons, because cartoons keep the content, it's repeatable. You can follow the storyline pretty easy. So it allows me to hear. So that's been
probably like simpler words too, like the dialogue's pretty low key. It's like just a basic conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I watch the cartoons in Mandarin when we travel.
That's amazing. There we go. See, this is great. I'm glad you brought it back.
Yeah. Thanks for having it.
Now listen, you've put me in contact with enough good connections, but if there's someone out there that you think that you'd be willing to connect us on the hoops journey that has a great story, who do you think that might person be? But if you want to say, you know what, Mitchell, listen, pal, I've connected you with enough. I'm done.
No.
I respect that too. But
no, I want more. I think it's great. I love the platform, getting some voice. I'm happy to help a bunch. But one I was thinking of was Lizanne Murphy. And I think Liz is just like great story. I thought, again, this is more Allison's era. I was fortunate to catch the end of her career, but she went from like a walk-on basically to an Olympian. And I think during that time was like the French MVP. And I think she became really essential to what that group was doing and changed the culture. So I would vote for her. I think she's a fun story. I think she's a really fun personality. So, and then she's now with the Olympic Committee. So I think she's still got a lot of cool connections. Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah. I'd vote for her. I can help connect that. See if we can make it happen.
My man, this guy's big time. I love it. Listen, dude, I think one of the things that I've really just loved about doing this podcast is either meeting new people, reconnecting with people, and I just love the way basketball shapes people and how journeys come and go. And I think your story is fantastic. It's so fun. I mean, we're like 20 plus years later from the Brandon days, man, which like for me, I have to remind myself sometimes. I'm like, well, I'm 46, right? Like it doesn't feel that long ago for me. Like I try to just really enjoy life and take it a day at a time, and it doesn't feel that long ago. But when you think about where we were in our lives and just trying to figure stuff out on a daily basis, I was trying to get my degree and you're coaching the women and then the men. I think it's so cool, man. And I'm really glad you're able to sit down and share your story. I think it's a fantastic one. I know you kind of like brushed it off a few times and whatever, and you've obviously got a busy life and things coming and going. But I think there's so many great things to learn and take away, especially for young coaches in our country. And what you've been able to carve and do in your career is phenomenal, man. So I think you give yourself some props, and I know there's still so much more to come, but health, happiness to you and your family. Any kind of last thoughts, reflections, ideas before we let you go? This has been so fun, man. It's great. I love the power of this stuff. It's super fun.
Yeah, it is really cool. And basketball is a fun vehicle that keeps us connected. And as I said, Brandon was a really formative time for me. It's probably the time where I went from just like enjoying basketball to like, this is something I want to spend like my life doing. And it was a great connecting spot for us. It was a hotbed for a lot of experiences for myself. And Brandon's a great spot for basketball. It truly is. I think it's relatively unique in our country. So it was cool to have landed there. But thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed your podcast. I follow, like I said, there's been a lot of people that I know and some people that I don't know that are in the basketball that I feel like I should know. So it's a great chance to hear some of their stories as well. And some of the people you've had on are like players from an era when like I started coaching and now they're moving into the next stage, and it helps me feel a little bit older too.
I love
I
it.
remember you playing U17, and here you are now, like finishing up your pro career. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm a little older than I like to pretend.
It is a good slap in the face. And then, you know what? The minute you start to feel yourself like you're young, your kids will quickly remind you that you're not as well. So,
Yeah, this is so true.
yeah. Now, listen, thank you for all your effort. Thank you for everything you've done for basketball in our country, both on the men and women's side. And I'm super proud of you. And I think it's phenomenal what you're doing with the women. And we want to see you keep pushing and we want to see a high medal at the Olympics one day. And I know that we'll get there. And I know with great people like yourself and the staff that you work with and the women that you get to see every single day, that we'll make it happen. So continued blessings to you, man. Keep it going. All the best for 2024. And keep it rolling, buddy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
A phenomenal episode. I think people will need to go back and kind of just revisit a few of the things, because there's so many great takeaways about building connections, stories, what it takes to become a coach in our country. Episode 216. If you're still with us, thank you. Thank you to our sponsors. And 126. I've got dyslexia. Is that the one? Anyways, let's get out of here. We got our last weekend before it's back to work. Thank you to our sponsors, and we'll see you on the next one.